Hello and welcome to the Insane Gorillas podcast, where we talk about a different movie each week. This week's movie is Robocop, the 1987, not the really crappy version of or the crappy remake that came out in 2016. We're watching the original one, so um, let's.
It was
Does
actually a
anyone?
remake in 2014, and it wasn't that bad. But go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So we can't really talk about. Well, the first time I watched RoboCop was actually the 2014 version, and then I was that just hearing that it was really bad, or a lot of people said it was really bad, made me interested in watching this. So I think this is the second time I've watched the original version, and I think they're
Hmm.
actually pretty alike. They just got different themes that they're trying to accomplish because they're trying to
Yeah.
make the new RoboCop more relevant. And
Hmm.
Right, and just the way that the overall graphics in general have been out, the technology and movies from then to now has completely jumped so far that just as a see, I grew up on RoboCop. I was born in '83, so came out in '87. I probably saw around '91. I loved RoboCop 1, 2, and 3. They were both amazing. But going back looking at it like yesterday, it was pretty goofy
Yeah.
compared to what I remembered it as a kid. So because I probably hadn't seen RoboCop 1 in 15 years. So when we went back and watched it yesterday, it was like through a fresh set of eyes as a completely changed adult, and it was very goofy. It was very
Right.
goofy.
But I don't think it was bad. Like it was cheesy in like the
No,
in like the '80s way. You know what I mean?
correct,
Like the
correct, correct.
endearing '80s way.
It pulled the audience that it was aiming for. My demographic at
Kids.
that
Yeah.
time, correct, and it did what it was supposed to do. Is at the time, I guess, the equivalent of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles role playing movie. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So
Well.
well, it is very much an 80s action movie in the sense that a lot of explosions, a lot of blood, and like a lot of like whenever someone dies, there's just a big blood explosion. It's not just even when the guy at the end gets stabbed in the neck, it's just all over the place and all. Yeah, but
You're the one who pointed it out, I think.
okay,
But it's
so the
like,
way he died. Okay, for one, you have to come at it from an aspect of I'm a 2A. Um, I like my guns, right? So I know my guns, and these guys all shot him, and he's just crying out, "Ah!" This whole entire time. Oh, he's being shot like at least 60 times with shotguns, and he stays standing the entire time. It is just so over the top.
right. It would leave him. I feel like it would just leave. There would be more pieces than there would be person. You know what I mean? At that point,
Well, they
like point
even
blank with the.
yeah, they even emphasize how when he's laying down, they shoot his arm. And he's like, "Oh, basically, pretty much, oh, you shot my arm off." But then he stands up and gets shot 60 more times, but nothing else falls off at all, at all. It,
Right.
it is just the. I was so disappointed on the death. I guess again, I hadn't remembered how that transition actually transpired in '87, and it
Hmm.
was it was ridiculous.
Well, as a kid, that was probably like raw. You know what I mean? Like as a kid, if you saw that, you'd be like, "Oh my god!" You know, he just got shot to death. Like, holy shit, this is cool. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like that
right.
type of
Which is
thing.
which is cool seeing it from as an adult, not seeing it since I was probably 16, seeing it again, saying, "Oh my gosh, how could I have loved this thing so much as I did as a child?" Because I had action
Right.
figures, man. By the time RoboCop 3 came out, I went and see it in the movie theaters. So it was a I don't know, it was just good going back watching it through a fresh person, because you evolve every 5 or so years. So like
Right.
just seeing it kind of was like, okay, it actually made me appreciate the newer RoboCop much better, much more.
Hmm. I actually haven't seen the newer RoboCop, so I can't really attest to
The
it.
plot on it
But
is much better. The plot on this one's kind of ridiculous. I think can't we all agree on that? Just the whole dialogue and plot's
it's out
pretty
there. The
goofy. It's pretty
dialogue is
goofy.
whack.
The
Yeah, and I
acting's a
think that
lot.
actually reminds me of another thing.
The
Oh,
acting in
go
this
ahead,
one,
Matt. Go ahead.
the acting in this one, there's a couple scenes where the actors are just a little overacting. I think where they're
Oh
kind of
yeah,
just, it's just a little weird. You can tell that it's just doesn't fit. Uh,
it's almost every scene. It's almost every scene, really, where they're overacting. You know what I mean?
So so there's one part. There's one part that we that Matt, you might have to go back and check. I'd love to be able to have that kind of channel to where we can just be like, look, put it right here, and then it'll show it. But
Mhm.
when the cop flies out of the front of the window, right? That gets thrown out by RoboCop. He gets thrown out of the window. In the actual scene that he gets thrown out of the window, it looks fine. It's cut perfect. Everything's great. You cut 3 seconds later, it's now the news broadcast of the same exact clip of the person falling out of the window. But you can actually, in the news clip little window while Letty's talking, you can see him bounce off of an air mattress.
Right. Yeah.
From the same exact fall that just happened. That was fine. But during editing on the news script, you could see him fall out the window and then he bounces back
Yeah.
up. I thought that was pretty interesting.
The stunt double
that got missed in editing. Yeah.
You see the stunt double
Someone
just pop back
missed
up.
that little detail right there. I don't know why they wouldn't have just taken the clip exactly as it just played and put it there, but they let it run just a little bit too long to where he bounces back up and his legs and his arms are back up. It's it's goofy.
It's like a spoof almost. It feels like a spoof a little bit.
what is it
It's
when?
so when the politician, remember the politician guy that held all those people hostage?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's who it was. He's the one
guy
that got,
the guy
like,
was saying he wanted a like a what was it, an 8,000 UX car or whatever it was, and he was talking to him
6,000 SUX.
6,000
Yeah.
SUX, yeah, that part.
In the newsreel after it, you can see like it blow up.
Yeah, they have another scene that's a little funny, and it's one of the scenes where someone there's always like there's 2 scenes or 3 scenes where someone's just falling out of a window, and they use the same weird little stunt where it's just a dummy, let's throw it out, and you can see
That's
the
funny.
arm doesn't look so right because it's bending the wrong way, and you can clearly tell that also like the arms are like twice the size of the body, and they're just way too long.
It just looks weird, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just another little point was what was it? It was so when they're up and they're first announcing the old man's there, you got the guy who has hair because it's in the 80s. Later on, he doesn't have hair in the 90s. When they first introduced, I can't remember, it was the E9209 or whatever it is, that robot that comes into the conference room. So when he points the gun and it starts malfunctioning and it laser focuses on him, through all those guns that big old thing shot, they're like on the 20th floor, all glass windows. Every bullet hit the guy. Not one bullet broke a window. Not one bullet, which is so unrealistic. And I get it; it's not meant to be realistic, but I mean, throw a rock, man. Throw a rock.
Well, here's my foil. Here's my foil. Here's my foil to that point. Okay, it might be intentional because the point could be that the accuracy is so spot on that it was impossible for it to miss. That type of
thing.
And
you would think that in the beginning, but when you go to the end and RoboCop is just like destroying him like they're nothing, it kind of plays against that first point that it was making.
Mm-hmm. I guess you're right. Yeah, that does make sense. But that kind of brings me to another thing I was thinking. Actually, is like Murphy is not a good character. Murphy is not a good character. Like, his actor did fine with the whole RoboCop performance, but him as a character it's like, oh, he has a wife and kids and he died and was rebuilt. You know what I mean? It's so like cookie cutter, bland. And I was kind of disappointed in that because I expected this movie to be more heavy on the themes and story. You know what I mean? I remember it being that way when I first watched it. But on this rewatch, in terms of the things of the world, like you have these little advertisements, right? These little cheeky advertisements.
Yep.
That was like my favorite part of the movie, those little ads, because it was so like self-aware. You know what I mean? Like the Nukem thing. I really liked those, but I don't know. I just really thought. Yeah, I'd buy that for $1. That whole thing.
Did they say that? Yeah, how many times did they say that? They're trying to get get sort of some sort of quid pro quo saying, like, generated from it, another way to
Right.
establish some sort of phrase or instance with RoboCop.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Right.
Well,
It's like cheat, like we were talking about. It's actually sorry, Matt. I don't mean to cut you off, but it just like came right into my head. Um, it's this movie is also a lot about theme wise. It's about convenience versus practicality. You know what I mean? That's one of the first things I noticed when we started watching through it is that it's kind of making the argument of, well, if you could have an automated police officer, right? It's like, would it really be something that you'd want to have? You know what I mean? Because like that's kind of like the idea, I guess, that it
Right,
goes through.
because
I'm
there's
glad.
no empathy. It takes away
Yeah,
empathy
yeah, yeah.
completely.
Right. And it's kind of cold and mechanical, but it also eventually later he starts to act on his own wishes. So it kind of shows like a it's a good theoretical situation, I think, and that's one thing I do praise this movie for is that specific theme of, like I said, practicality versus convenience is something that I think it did really well.
yeah. One thing I wanted to hit on before we move on is that the 2014 version of RoboCop in this, well, in the original RoboCop, it doesn't really hit much on his family, and you don't learn as much about his family. While the
Yeah.
2014 RoboCop, you learn more about the family and their relationship, how they all really love each other, but they're still having problems in their
Right.
relationship. So it's more. I think the newer one's more hitting about what if you took humanity away from someone who, like, taking someone's humanity away. Well, this one sort of hits on that kind of
Hmm.
aspect, but it doesn't really do it well. It kind of his family comes out of nowhere, kind of at one point. You don't learn too much
Yeah, they're
about the
just like
relationship.
Yeah.
they're even swaying together when they're waving, like they're both swaying. It's just so, and he writes them off
Comical.
so quickly in the show when it's like, okay, I've died, my kid, and then he just moves on to being like RoboCop. Whereas and I know, Ty, you haven't seen it. I know we're not reviewing that movie, but it's in the 2014 one. I was also waiting to say that it really focuses on the family way more in the 2014 one. It is really like the woman who plays his wife is really like involved in the movie, going to the company, telling them. And Ty, I know you don't know, but in the new RoboCop, they actually could dial in how much humanity to give him. Right, they had that
Mm.
power over RoboCop. So
Okay.
there was at one point that they were allowing him to like see his family and to like once a week or whatever, he'd be able to go see his family, and it would be real awkward, like, but they would turn up his humanity. And then once that shit started to hit the fan, they started dialing down his humanity, where he was just going out kicking ass, taking names. And at one point, like the mom and the kid haven't seen him, so they go up to try and see him, and they do get it. They do get an interaction, but he doesn't even recognize them because they literally have his humanity turned all the way down.
Right.
So he's
Right.
just on automation mode. So again, that's a praise that I for the 2014 one, that it is very underrated when you're thinking about the lore of RoboCop. But I thought the 2014 one did real well on speaking about his wife and his kids. It kind of pulled on the heartstrings a little bit more than not being so goofy. It was more set in a more
Mm.
serious tone all around.
Well, I think one
Um.
thing they really wanted to hit on in this one is more the action, because at this time I think action is what sold a film. So they were like, okay, let's add as much explosions, as much pyrotechnics, pyrotechnics as we can, because people really enjoy that. It's almost at some points I feel like I'm watching a Michael Bay film for how many explosions and stuff there are, especially
Yeah.
when they bring out their little
I mean, I wouldn't be
sniper
surprised.
rifles. There's the sniper rifles that act almost as like
Oh.
RPGs.
Yeah, that's one of the
Yeah.
things that we were talking about. It looked like they were maybe, I think, 50 cals, and they have these, like, I don't know, futuristic square type scope on it, but none of them were using the scope. They were all just hip firing. It was just blowing shit up, like, pow, blow up that entire building with one bullet. It was almost like it was a rocket launcher. I didn't
Yeah.
understand that whole part. It was overemphasized, but yeah.
Well, if you think about
But I kind
physics,
of wanted to
also,
actually.
if you think about physics,
Oh
they'd
yeah.
be
Well, no. Physics
blasted
wise, it doesn't
backwards.
make any sense. Yeah, they'd probably break their pelvis or wherever they're holding it and probably snap.
Oh yeah.
But one thing I did want to talk about is it seems like from what you guys are saying that the 2014 one is more focuses more on like what it means to be human, and the older one like doesn't really, which is kind of interesting because I expected the whole movie to be about like what it means to be a human. That's what I expected the whole movie to be about, and it wasn't really about that at all. It was more just like action. You know what I mean? Like I got into RoboCop, like I saw it the first time because I have a friend who's really big into like old sci-fi stuff. Like he loves Judge Dredd, who's kind of similar, kind of in the
Judge
same
Dredd is
vein.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Judge Dredd is cool, but anyway, so that's how I got exposed to it. But I don't know, going through a second time, it seemed a lot less serious to me, a lot less, a lot more goofy, which is kind of interesting because obviously I'm a lot younger than you, and it's like I don't know, kind of an interesting experience. And actually, it kind of brings me to one complaint I had, and I don't know if you maybe noticed this, Matt, but I this is something I definitely noticed is that so Murphy as RoboCop throughout most of the movie, he's basically completely calculating and cold and robotic. You know what I mean? Like in terms of his emotions, and it's after he gets like attacked or after he attacks the dude, all that stuff happens, he gets damaged. It's almost like there's a switch that happens when he's talking to the girl. You know what I mean? It's like a switch, and all of a sudden he's super melodramatic and superhuman. And I was like, that doesn't really make much sense, story wise, right? It's like it doesn't feel like it was properly worked in. I don't know. Maybe that was just me, but
I feel exactly the same way. I think it's almost weird. It's almost like a light switch where it's like, okay, here's all your humanity. You can have it back now. After he gets shot up
right.
by the police and stuff, it doesn't really fit. It's not well explained, and it just overall, I don't think it's well done. It just seems a bit
Mhm.
weird. Also, one thing I really feel the when why does Murphy take off the helmet? He takes off the helmet also at that point, and it's just the weirdest looking
Yeah.
thing in the world. I really don't like the way RoboCop looks without
So
the helmet.
yeah, so to touch on that, we were actually talked about that last night where he says, I thought we said 100% prosthesis or whatever the word is, where it's prosthetic. So they lost his arm because they were going to keep one of his arms that was usable. But then at the end, you see that they kept his face. Not only did they keep his face, it looks like they cut out his bone and stretched his skin across some
Yeah.
weird circle forehead thing.
I
That
think it looks cool, honestly, in a way. I think it looks like not. It looks
I
gross,
remember
but
when I
it's
heard
well
it as a
done.
kid, when I watched it as a child, it scared the shit out of me. Like when he
Yeah.
did, I was like, "Put your helmet back on, man! For the love of God, man! Put the helmet back on."
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I just thought it was well. It was good makeup. That's what I thought. It was really good movie makeup.
Well, it also doesn't make much sense practicality wise that I feel like his face would be the weakest place on his body too, because it's
Right.
just
Yeah.
skin, and then it could. I
They had
doubt it's
a
bone behind it, but I feel like there might be like a skull there. But and then he's
right.
getting shot at
Well,
by all these people, and then no one hits him in the face. Not a single
right.
time
Like
have they really hit him in the face, except when they have
no, they have a perfect opportunity to remove his biggest weak spot, But that kind of reminds me also when I first started watching it, like well when we were halfway through last night, I remember I said watching RoboCop again kind of reminds me of how good the original Terminator is. You know what I mean? Like how much better and iconic it is. I mean, I'm not saying this movie's terrible, but I just think it's a similar concept, and I just think that watching through it, right, it just reminded me like, man, remember in fucking Terminator when T-1000 or T-1000 whatever does fucking whatever like it just kind of reminds
But
me of that.
they've built so much lore around the Terminator, though. Like that's endless. You could just because they've even done timelines. Like they did timelines before it got brought
Yeah,
into mainstream, like Marvel movies. Obviously it was in the comics, but like they brought in timelines, so it's its whole beast, man. It's got this whole mythology behind it that just really makes it like a power beast because even
right.
going back to the first one where the naked dude drops and he throws on some fresh Nike kicks, like some white
Hmm.
bread Nikes he gets out of the mall. That one's awesome from beginning to end. There's some funky parts in there, excuse me, but not some like the RoboCop was pretty ridiculous. Like there was a
Yeah,
lot of looking back on it. It was so ridiculous. There was parts we had to rewind. Just it was so ridiculous.
yeah. Well,
yeah.
what I'm saying basically is like movie to movie. I'm saying like as movies alone, I think that Terminator is just a lot better. That's what I'm saying, basically. I mean, RoboCop has an extended universe too. You know what I mean? He's really big in like comics and that kind of thing. I mean, obviously the films, but he has like this whole comic thing that's like super big. I know. So I mean, I've never read any of them. I just know that that's kind of his expanded universe. But what were you gonna say, Matt?
Well, I was thinking. I think I kind of forgot what I was gonna say, but
Oh
Termin.
God.
I'm sorry about that.
Well, no, it's not your fault. In RoboCop, yeah, the story's a bit lacking, but I don't know why this has become. Why has it become so popular? Is what I'm trying to figure out. Because it's a good movie to an extent, but some of it's just a little funny. I think at that time it was just really popular, and I think that's
Mm.
why. And then of
Well,
course the 24.
it's iconic for kids. It's
Yeah,
iconic for like for example, people these ages. It's iconic for them. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those things like
It's
where
like the
it's kind of
Karate Kid,
some.
man. It's like Karate Kid. It kind of takes you back to where back to that time because I can think back and remember those days of the '80s where everyone wore stonewashed clothes and thought they were cool with the mullet, and the girls had the same feathered haircut as the guys. I just
Yeah.
I don't know. There's so many more that do it better. But RoboCop 2 actually, I want to say the story gets better. The storyline just keeps getting better as technology and evolved, and they started like actually putting writers on it, realizing okay, the first one really was just kind of ridiculous with the bad guys and just the goofiness of the bad guys. Like one point in time, they're driving and the dude tells him to go fast, and he like literally kicks his leg up like this, and it's like go go red from that '70s show. Like it was just over the top ridiculous the way that
But you
they
know what though?
portrayed criminals.
I kind of like the over the top nature of it because like obviously like it's kind of something I see in anime a lot. Like not all of them, it depends on the writer, right? But it is something you see in a lot of popular anime where characters kind of act exaggeratedly, and I think that I don't know. I think it's kind of endearing. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like it's funny in a way because it's like it's almost ironic. You know what I mean? I mean, in the movie, it really isn't ironic, but I don't know. I just get kind of an ironic enjoyment out of it, and it's not really toxic to the movie, I don't think. But it does kind of make me think about, like, oh, there's something that I also thought about is like they made like the one black dude be like the most like they just made him be like the most stereotypical like overdone cliche '80s trope, like ooh, I'm the black guy, ugh, you know what I mean? And it's like, bruh,
yeah,
it was so it was so annoying to hear him
It
talk. I
was
was
it
like,
was it was cringeworthy, man. That's the
oh
word.
yeah, it
Like,
was
yeah.
cringe,
Ty,
yeah.
if you watch the 2014 version, the black guy, he's a lot. He's like the partner to Murphy, so he has a lot
Mhm.
more
Mm.
of a story in that one. This one he kind of is touched on, and it's a really weird. It's just sometimes he's with the company and he like agrees with them, and then other times he's like, I hate that company, and it's really weird. His character just doesn't seem really well built. But the
Oh wait,
2014 version is a lot better.
are you talking about the dude, the
What?
politician dude? Not the
No,
politician, but
I'm just
you're
talking.
talking about the business guy,
Are
right?
you talking?
Or hold on. Because I'm talking about the guy who was like a one of the thugs in
He's talking
the
about the
other
thug that
Oh,
dudes.
cackled. The guy that
oh, oh.
the cackling black guy.
That's the
He was like,
criminal
yeah,
one,
yeah,
right?
you
Oh, okay.
jive, whatever. Yeah, that
Oh,
guy.
I
Yeah,
was thinking of the police
Yeah.
officer. The police officer in the police
Oh
yeah.
station.
no
But
no 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 no.
they
Well,
do
he is over the
replace.
top, but
Yeah, they do replace. And another thing that was over the top was the way that they were just treating people. They would like, oh, you're in serious trouble. And they start pushing people. It's like, man, you
yeah,
wouldn't.
yeah.
I get that they're trying to do like a darker type, theme of life. These cops are just going out and dying every single day, but still, like just the way people treat each other in the movie, just all over the top, all around. The way that they're pushing on women cops, and that's just, man, that would not do in
Not
today's
fly.
society.
Yeah, no.
You would be hung on a cross, man, if you were
Yeah.
to do that kind of stuff in real life.
there's lots of like weird casual sexism. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
yep, that's the '80s. You know what I mean? It's like where
And
he's like,
when I watched that movie from last week that you guys did, Akira,
mm-hmm,
when he ripped that girl's shirt off, that like teenage girl's shirt off, and exposed
mm-hmm,
her breastises, I was like, what the fuck?
yeah,
What the fuck? Like
it was pretty
that was
fucked
so
up.
like it made me cringe. I was like, what the fuck? Like I couldn't believe that shit was in anime, man. That it had got so deep. But anyways, I don't mean to go off on it, but I was just relating it. It was
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
cringeworthy.
they have there's a lot. Well, for example, Matt is reading Berserk right now, and I'm sure Matt can attest to that there's much darker stuff,
There's a
like
whole
much
character.
darker stuff.
There's a whole
Well, there's a
character.
whole.
No, there's just one character,
Uh,
Casca, and her shirt's ripped off like that many times during
yeah,
during
it's
the
just.
whole series. I think
I
10
might
or
actually
12
cry if we
times.
keep talking about it. So
But yeah,
that's so hard to read, but yeah.
yeah.
But anyway, um,
Well, one thing we were talking about beforehand, and we didn't want to talk about it too much, was how they watched a censored version on YouTube, and some of it was I think they said it was a little weird. Do you want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, there were words like instead it was weird because if it was just ass, it would say it. It would
mhm.
say ass. But if it was asshole, asshead, it's fucker or hoopless. Just don't.
Oh, you're kind of cutting out for me. You're
Yeah.
cutting out for me a little bit.
Word like flubber. Like it was so overly edited that I think you could say. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. It's just it happens sometimes.
Yeah, but go ahead. You go ahead. You heard him too. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah, they would the well, my real problem with it wasn't necessarily that they replaced it, but that the dubbing was so terrible. You know what I mean? They'll be like, "You flabbergabbered," or like they'll just make up some random shit, and you'll be like, "What the fuck? You couldn't think of anything better?" You know what I mean? Like, what was it for asshole? Like, what was it? I want to look up a list because they were so stupid that it was like it went beyond the fucking level for like what my expectations for made up shitty replacements for cuss words could be. I'm gonna look it up right now. Actually,
Did it almost sound
RoboCop.
like those kindergarten cuss words, like where they don't know what quite to say, but they just start making up crap and calling it bad words?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly what it was.
Well, it
it
reminds me
was.
of what is it, Die Hard, and he says yippee ki yay, and then of course the line motherfucker, but then in the TV version it's yippee ki yay, Mr. Falcon, just because they couldn't say the F word.
I've heard mother flubber. I've heard it say mother flubber before. Yeah,
Yeah.
Die Hard was a good one.
Yeah, but that's a pretty interesting film. What Die Hard didn't out around that around come out at the same time as RoboCop, did it? Because
No, I want to say it was later. It came in. I
yeah,
want to
it
say
seems
early
a bit
'90s.
later. 1988, 1 year later.
1 year later. Okay. Okay.
Because it's got a lot of that action stuff.
Commando's also a good one to go back and see. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that. Arnold Schwarzenegger's Commando. It's an '80s.
I've
It's an
heard of
'80s.
it.
Oh, you've never seen it? Oh
I've
man,
never
you gotta
seen
watch
it.
it.
I've
It's
heard
what
of
got
it.
him. It's
So
what got him big in the U.S.
Maybe we can do a
episode about that sometime.
Do like an
I want to
episode
say
about it.
I want to say that's the one that got him the Predator role. Because he did
Hmm.
early on. He did Conan movies when he first got over to America. Conan
Right,
the Barbarian.
Conan.
The
And
Barbarian.
he did some other like weird stuff where they dubbed over his voice with
Yeah,
English.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yep. Because he couldn't.
Yep.
He didn't yet know how to speak English properly. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like he never really learned, but I mean, it's
He became
iconic,
the
you know?
governor of California.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Barbarian.
Yeah, that's just an America thing, you know, to put celebrities in a position of authority, governmental power. It's I mean, I don't know, but I'm looking here on the censorship like page, right? And it's interesting how they let ass fly a couple times because looking through here, ass was actually censored several times. It was censored several times. They had like at this part where the guy's in the bathroom. Remember, the guy's taking a shit. The other
Yeah,
guy's
yeah,
in
yeah.
there. They're
Where Dick
conspiring.
comes up to him, talking to him
Right, right.
afterwards.
And it's
Yeah, yeah.
instead of ass, it's rib. It's rib. He says the original is ass, and then he says like probably just to light a fire under Joe's rib or some shit like that, which is like doesn't make any sense. But yeah. And then they like replace fucking with like forget or fooling or bitching with ditzing and like
It's
just
so
all
weird because
kinds of
even
stupid
back
shit.
then, fuck has been the most popular word in the human language for I don't know, man, since it's been
Well,
invented, hundreds
English,
of years. English, yeah,
English, English
but
language.
hold on a second. There other languages have the same derivatives that mean fuck. That's a universal word. It could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. It could be multiple things. It's
Well, I think actually the universal quality of the word fuck is actually. I mean, I'm not saying it's completely exclusive to English, but I'm sure other languages have their own variation of their own
equivalent.
version.
Yeah, they have their own
Right.
equivalent.
But the thing about fuck is that it's and the thing about the English languages in general is that all words in English really depend on completely on context. So their intrinsic meaning is really kind of stripped away. So like
Yeah, but that's what
obviously
I was
fuck is
saying
to have
was that
sex.
it's we could fuck or to like, but in the movie
It
it was
can
just
mean it.
weird because in that time fuck was still being used highly all the time, right? In popular
Yeah.
movies, clearly it was a kid oriented uh, movie. They probably I don't know how they would have went about that because if it had all those words, then it must have been rated R, unless it was before the rating system. I mean, I
Well,
think that
yeah.
didn't happen till the early '90s.
Well, I think when did Gremlins come out? Because that's when that's when the ratings changed on certain movies because Gremlins was they couldn't decide whether they wanted PG-13 or R or whatever. Uh,
You sound a lot like Joe Rogan, like your voice over the thing.
yeah,
What?
I,
I don't really hear it. I
I
don't hear
do,
that.
man. I
my
hear
voice
that. I
sounds
listen to Joe
terrible to
Rogan
me
from time
though.
to
So
time. No, you
You
sound
what?
like
What'd
Joe
you say,
Rogan.
Matt?
my voice sounds terrible to me when I have to rewatch things and make sure
Nah,
everything's okay with them. So,
nah,
uh,
man. Your voice
but
sounds fun. It sounds great.
yeah, well, in one point in the movie, I think the I don't know is the businessman who's he dies from the grenade after Red throws it on or Red drops it on a table. Uh,
Yeah.
what's his name? I'm really bad with names. If you ever
The actor's name or the guy's name?
The
the
old man who
character's name.
old man on the DVD.
Yeah. No, no. The guy who got attacked by him, blown up by him.
No, not the Jones
Oh,
guy. The he gets shot in the legs like 4 times. Wait, and then
Yeah,
he just
yeah.
sets the grenade on the table. It just I'm
yeah,
really
that's
bad with
Red from
names.
that '70s show. That's Red. I don't remember what his real name is, but there was
His
a whole
name
thing
is
behind all
Kurtwood
that.
Smith.
They left they left they left the DVD in the that was proof that he was like, you messed with me, I'm gonna get you. This is me getting you. This is me killing you. Take your last breath because I'm killing you. And then
Yeah.
the guy puts the grenade on the table and then walks out. He doesn't go take the DVD out, then put the grenade on the table. He leaves the DVD for evidence for when if for some reason even a piece of that was still remaining.
Right.
He just a stupid way of getting vengeance on
Yeah,
someone. Just
And it ends up.
not thought out. Not thought out.
It's actually the exact thing that ends up fucking him over.
It is,
That's the
but it's
exact
recorded by
thing.
RoboCop.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
He left his own trail. He complains to the dude for getting him involved, and then leaves a direct trail straight to him, guilty as charged. It's like, what the fuck? He's the most retarded villain I think I've ever
Yeah, but
seen.
he was in a lot of '80s movies. Like I was saying yesterday, he was in Total Recall as one of the main villains with Arnold
Mm.
Schwarzenegger. Total Recall. That's also a good movie to watch. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, that guy was real big in the '80s. That older gentleman, I can't remember what his name is, but the guy who was on the DVD.
Ronnie Cox? Is it Ronnie Cox? I don't know. I'm looking at the actors right now, but I do remember Miguel Ferrer. I think that's how you say his name. It kind of surprised me because I actually was watching Twin Peaks and I recognized him from Twin Peaks, and it made me so happy because he plays the same character. He plays literally the same character. I mean like literally in a parody way. He plays the same character in Twin Peaks, like this overly kind of snidey, kind of conniving, condescending fucker. He plays that exact thing, and so I saw it and I was like, I love this so much.
I think that's how he is in most movies I've seen him in. He always
Yeah.
has
Well,
he
I
has
know.
the same sort of role.
Right.
And that's
Well, I know David Lynch. He'll take characters like he'll see a character in a role in a movie, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna take that actor and make them act this way in my movie. You know what I mean? Like it's I don't know. It's just a thing.
yeah.
They probably
Sorry, I didn't mean
picked
to cut
him.
you
They
off.
probably picked him for those qualities.
Yeah, yeah.
He just seems like one of those type
But-
of people. But what is it? His character's Bob Morton. That's who I was meaning earlier. He says when we were talking about cuss words and stuff, he says the F word like so many times in like a sentence that it's like he says it like 8 times back to back in just different ways. It's really
Yeah,
he just says it over
sounded
and
just
over
like
again.
jargon to us.
Yeah.
Because we watched the censor version, so it just was like a bunch of hip jive talk.
Yeah, yeah. Like you
Fucking
friggin' Bobbin Jubin Jobber.
Yeah,
that kind of
like-
thing. That's what it sounds like. Which it kind of makes it better, I think, because it's so
man,
terrible.
at least, if they're gonna replace the word "fuck" with something, at least make it to where every time he says "fuck," you replace it with the same word. So you
Right,
can
something like
understand
that.
That he's saying what you get. If he's saying "flippin' flopper" and really saying "you fucking fuck," you're not really grasping what.
You're like, well, why is this grown ass man calling someone else a
At least
flippin'
say-
fucking father?
Right, should at least say a fluckin' fluck, or keep the censorship, utilized.
Yeah, some consistency, please. But I don't know. I don't know. I kind of like it in a way because it's like it feels like they didn't even try. You know what I mean? It feels like they're just like, we need a word here. Well, we can't use bitch, so we'll just say, badingus or whatever the fuck it is.
One thing
Like,
I
all right.
noticed, which I thought was great, was that it must have been before the AR-15 had been created, because there wasn't a single American rifle in the movie. Right, everything was in the future. Right, you're talking had a Russian machine gun with the magazine coming out the side. All the guns were Luger style weapons, except and RoboCop had like it's like a highly modified Desert Eagle, just this huge freaking pistol, and he's like, it's a triple shooting, which isn't real. You need like a binary trigger or something. But I was thinking, if they can afford, they're going through all these cops and all these cops are dying, why doesn't everyone on the force have that badass gun? Like, why doesn't everyone get issued that badass gun that can just tear through people?
Well, probably for a couple of reasons. One is probably for marketing, like for RoboCop himself. It wouldn't make, you know what I mean? To
I get it
distinctify
from
him.
the story standpoint, but I mean, in the world, I'm talking, we're living in the world of RoboCop, in his dimension.
Right.
It's like,
Well-
all right, well, that sergeant's fucking up because, first, get them all quality firearms. You have all 4-inch, concealable firearms that police officers are shooting. That's ridiculous.
Right.
His
Well, it's
gun
like if
is
you have,
massive,
I guess I get it.
though.
It is,
I feel
well,
like
that's the thing, though. It's like. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I just feel like that
No,
would
you're
be
fine. You're fine.
that would be a massive gun for I think police officers to have, and I think also that they use it more for like a look, because even on posters and stuff, he's always having that giant like Desert Eagle in his hand, the modified
Yeah.
Yeah,
look.
that's what I'm saying.
So it's
It's
for
like an aesthetic
effect,
thing.
but also it's just I don't think a regular police officer would want that, because they'd have to carry that everywhere. They'd have to have that on their belt
Yeah.
all the time. He
It
keeps
It's
could
it
funny
in
become
his
because
impractical.
Later in the movie, they pull out. Right, he keeps it in his leg. Right. Later, which is also a huge gun nightmare. Like for the guy to be twirling his gun, that is like gun safety fucking 101. Like if you want to talk about the realistic of this, that part to me, as soon as he was twisting his gun out of his car, I was, all right, this guy's a fucking idiot. He shouldn't be having a gun, let alone being a fucking police officer. I mean, but later in the movie,
Maybe that's
they did
why.
end up having the villain
Maybe
pull
that's
out
why.
all chrome Desert Eagle. He pulled out an all chrome Desert Eagle. It was like classic '80s Miami, all chrome Desert Eagle. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah. That
The gun spinning was so silly, but
it's very
I
cheesy.
think they also tried to. Yeah, it is very cheesy, and they kind of tried to make like a message out of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like the kid, it's like, oh, the kid sees his dad twirling the gun, right? So it's like, oh, he twirls, and it's like, well, I mean, yeah, but
Yeah,
not really.
he's the
You know what I
only
mean?
he's the only guy in the '80s twirling his gun, so you can identify him just based on a gun. When I was a kid, I'd twirl fucking guns. You know what I mean? Everybody twirled guns in the '80s.
Yeah.
The best part is he's twirling a Desert Eagle though, and it's like, oh, I
Yeah,
know, it's Murphy. It's Murphy.
Oh yeah. How we recognized him off of that shit.
Yeah, the police officer
Yeah, I'm talking about
recognized
how the guy
him
recognized.
just from the twirl, not even from like
Well,
how his face
yeah.
looks, not even from
Yeah.
this area alone, but the
Well,
twirl.
even when he meets that guy with the terrible, he's going bald and he has like it gelled going down. When he meets the guy and he's like, either way, dead or alive, you're coming with me. And the guy's like, we killed you. Like he knows who he is based upon one sentence that the guy said.
Mhm. And it would have made more sense, right, if it was like a very specific sentence, but it's like
Right.
I could
Right.
see another police
That's a
officer or
very
something.
policey thing to say. Like, no matter
Right.
what, buddy, you're coming with me. You know, that's very policey. That's a general statement. I don't think that's an identifying factor for another human being, especially in a city that has old Detroit and new Detroit, where it's
Right.
highly overpopulated. You know what I mean? Just, I don't know. Another little defect in the thing that they kept doing it. Like, okay, his partner that he worked with for all of 6 hours recognized him based off of a gun twirl.
Right. And also the oh shit, I was gonna say oh yeah. So at one point they say that like one of the business executives guys is talking about like he's making all these promises, right? And he's like, oh, I promise we'll get crime eliminated in old Detroit.
Here are for the most part, not all the people, but you know they're everywhere.
A lot of
So
people are.
right, correct. So more than any other country. So it's a high
Well,
deterrent.
we're also like close allies with our close, neighboring countries. So it's like,
Right.
I mean, when it comes to that, you know what I mean? Like, it's like fighting a war overseas is like you're always fighting an uphill battle there. But you know what I mean? But I don't know. It's yeah. But there's also the God, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, like people in this movie just say things. You know what I mean? Like it's like they don't even think about it. Like they just say things. And oh yeah. The girl officer, right? They try to kind of like at the very last minute of the movie, they kind of try to like half-heartedly throw in this like almost romantic subplot, but it doesn't. One, it doesn't go anywhere, and two, it's just kind of weird. You know what I mean?
It's out of
like
nowhere.
When she's aiming his weapon, it's out of nowhere. It's really kind of dumb. Like,
well, you gotta understand they didn't spend the time to make any attachments to his actual wife or really anyone. He didn't.
Right.
They didn't tie in any kind of backstory or emotional bindings to anyone except maybe his partner, and that was very brief. So
yeah.
it wouldn't make much sense for them to try to do, because she, in essence, kind of brought him back to his humanity. I mean, that was kind of what I felt that was all about. That was like letting the audience know, hey, he recognizes his partner. He's back to being Murphy. He's no longer Robocop. I think that's where that kind of played in there, and they didn't have, they didn't put in the the pre-plot shit to tie you to anyone except his partner. So I think that's my personal opinion on why that got added in there. It is that's why it's weird and forced, because it's like they had to somehow appeal to his human side. Who else on there would have done it? It had no close buddies, no one. He was just there one day on his very first day. So
Right.
yeah,
And he, yeah, because him as a character is not a very strong character, and I feel like they didn't do a good job of making his partner a complex character either. So it's like, I just don't think that yeah, I don't think you should have like a romantic type subplot if you don't need one. You know what I mean? It's like it's not necessary.
Well, you got to remember also,
I mean,
this is the
it feels like
80s where almost
right, in the
every
80s,
movie
yeah,
has
that's what I
some
was about
sort
to
of
say.
romantic subplot to try to
right.
get
They
women
they
in the
all
theater.
kind of right. They all kind of follow suit in the same kind of, I don't know, texture that the stuff that they throw into the movies.
Formulaic.
All of them. Yeah, the formula is all kind of the same. It really goes to show that the different movies from the 80s, how they vary, even going further back, and how what what's required to capture people's attention. In the 80s, explosions, the guy getting a girl, these types of things, these really corny, cheesy things that by now have been so overplayed that you have to put in a bunch of subplot, backing, get emotional to the characters. When then all it was okay, explosions, this cool looking robot walking around blowing holes in people. That shit was awesome because you didn't really see that on the big screen.
Right.
So now people literally their whole job is just to make this shit as awesome as possible. So it really goes to show just how far movies have come. If you take the old 87 version to the 2014 version, most hardcore RoboCop fans are going to say the 2014 sucked. But if you look at it for what it was versus what we're looking at now, it really did come such a long way. And just overall as
Story-wise, it's a lot better.
Yeah. Overall,
well, really, this
is
is
better. Where they really fucked up,
really.
when they even tried to make him edgy by making him black. That's kind of where they took it a little bit. It just took away from the silver fucking RoboCop, okay, which is the iconic.
I don't know.
silver
I feel
RoboCop.
like if he's a different RoboCop, I feel like it doesn't matter at all. Like
it looks badass. It looks badass. I'm saying it's like how every Marvel movie, every comic, every one of the characters get an upgraded suit. Okay, that's what it is. So they upgraded his suit from the 80s to make it relevant, to make it new, to make it.
Oh, so they made his suit like darker and like
black.
The
When he first came out, he was the original silver. Of course, they got to give the nod. They got to give the nod to the original silver, and then
right.
he goes under the refinement process, and the refinement process is him on a black motorcycle, painted in black.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that actually. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was just trying to say that. Actually, no. I have a point that I was gonna make later on. Don't worry about it. I'll bring it up later.
Is it about the car?
No. It was another thing about relating to the movies from the 80s and before.
Oh well. Continuing on with this, it's like, so in this one, you had pointed out, Ty, while we were watching it, was it's funny how RoboCop, this, the dude's obviously 2 foot bigger. He was some scrawny dude, probably weighed 140 pounds going in there. This huge dude, and just gets in a normal Forest car, and that's his car.
Yeah.
RoboCop's car. He doesn't get any kind of special vehicle, nothing that makes him badass. He just gets in an old school painted black flat Ford Taurus.
And it plays the epic music. It's dusty as hell, and they play the music, so it's like. Yeah. He just drives out of the police station. It's like da-na-na, and it's just like this fucking normal ass police car. You can't even see RoboCop in it.
See,
so
that's
good.
the cool thing on the 2014 version. He at least gets like this badass motorcycle, dude. That's his, and it's really a part of him, and I don't know, it's badass.
I think it only works with him. It only works with him.
Yeah.
Plus, another thing about the 2014 version is he has a human hand. He's got that.
Yep.
You get to see the insides and stuff. You get to see how it works. So he has all his organs and everything, and then one of his arms is still connected, and it's just like a suit over his arm, and you get to see a lot more of the inside details, and I think overall the story is a lot better. But this one has it's got that nostalgic feel, and I think that's why people keep coming back to this one and saying that this one's really good.
It's classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's
classic.
a classic. Correct. Like if you try to tell me a fan of, again, I'm going to reference the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies from the originals. Okay, the new ones are awesome and I love them for what they are. You know, whimsical Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies. They're funny, but they don't hold a candle to the originals. Even though if you go back and watch the originals, they're goofy as fuck, right? But it doesn't matter. It's the intent and just the love and the spark that it brought, you know, from that age and era. And I really think, like Matt said, that's why people keep coming back to the original RoboCop, because it is the original, even though it's
Right.
kind of goofy. That it
Yeah.
always gets played down on how I'd totally forgotten how goofy it actually was. But when you're a kid,
But
I guess
that does,
it is goofy.
yeah.
That's
It
all
probably
serious
seems
stuff.
more real.
Yeah, it's
Right,
all like
right.
serious stuff. Like, yeah.
But I think, well, I did want to note something here, and I'm not calling you out, but I did want to mention this because I want to hear Matt's opinion on it as well. When we were watching it, we were talking about the '80s, blah blah blah, and you said something like, "There's not any good movies before the '80s," and I was like, you know what I mean? You said like the '70s is where they come into the
Where they
play,
where
but I
they
really
start coming into better acting. The acting before, I feel, it's intolerable.
I disagree because, like, if you look at even something like The Godfather, came out in the early '70s. That has some of the best acting of all time. You have Marlon Brando, Al Pacino,
I think it
all
has
these
some of the
guys.
best actors of all time, but I don't think that the acting at the time was the pinnacle of that actor to what
But
they became.
that's it's
I think
really
it's made
it's
iconical because it does have the beginnings of Pacino and all them in it.
I would
More.
say it still has some of the best. Even today,
Have you
it's
guys
still
ever
a
seen
hallmark.
Taxi? Have you guys ever seen Taxi?
Yep.
Taxi or
Okay.
yeah, I have
No,
not seen
Taxi.
Taxi. I
Taxi.
have
Okay,
not
well
seen
then
Taxi.
you can't really comment on it, but that movie is just a brooding movie the whole time. It's really it doesn't have much substance. I watched it through twice, and it's just a typical. I've heard how great it was, blah blah. Blah. I watched it and I was just like, really boring, really bland. I just can't get into the acting and the storylines. Like I just need more from it than what
Well,
they gave.
Well,
Taxi came out in 2004.
No, bro.
I
No,
think he's
Taxi did
talking about
not
the
come out in
sitcom.
2004.
Are you talking about the
No,
series?
I'm talking about the movie. I'm talking about the movie Taxi.
Are you thinking Taxi
Taxi
Driver?
Driver?
Maybe it's Taxi Driver. Maybe
It's
it's
Taxi
Taxi Driver.
Driver is, in my opinion, one of the best movies ever made. This is the one where the guy shakes his head. He has a weird mohawk. You know, there's a prostitute girl.
Robert De
You know, he
Niro.
fucking kills a bunch of people. It's
Robert
Robert
De
De
Niro.
Niro.
It's De Niro.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the young De
See
Niro.
Taxi Driver.
that movie is
Yeah,
that movie
Taxi
is in
Driver.
my
That's what I
top
meant.
3 of all time.
So, and
That's my
like I said,
favorite Martin
I've heard
Scorsese
that it
movie.
was great. I heard that it was great, and I watched it. I gave it 2 full run throughs, and I got to say, I do after the second one, I understood more of what they were going for, but even still, it's not one of the top 3 movies of all time in my opinion.
No, it's a in my opinion, it's a masterpiece. Not only for how good it is within itself, but also incredibly influential for films in general. And I mean, that's Martin Scorsese we're talking about. You know, in my opinion, Martin Scorsese is the greatest American director of all time. His track record is untouchable. He has Goodfellas, he has Raging Bull, he has Taxi Driver, he has Mean Streets, he has Casino. You know, he's the greatest American film director. And Taxi Driver, in my opinion, is it to me it's so symbolic, and it really reaches out, and it talks about so much stuff about American culture and violence and
And people
the
coming
way
home
that
from the war and all that.
right right right
I get all that. I get all that. I just don't. I don't know. It's not my thing. It's
Well,
just not my bag of worms.
let me.
right. Well, I think
Well,
we look for. Oh, go ahead, man.
well, I've seen a lot of movies from many different time periods. I've seen like Sound of Music. I've seen Casablanca. All these really popular movies, and I feel like the only way to really describe a movie, whether it can't just be the actor's fault. It has to be the writer's fault mixed with the actors, and whether the actors could get into that role or not. Because sometimes you feel as though these actors are just doing this movie so that they can get a paycheck. And now it depends on
Right.
whether they can make that connection to that. So, for example, I think Taxi Driver isn't my favorite Robert De Niro film. I'd say Goodfellas would be much like my favorite out of Robert De Niro's works, and it's because you can see the actors in those parts in those roles, and they fit really well, and the story just is really good overall. And it's when you have both a good story and good actors that know what their role is, that's when you get a really good film. But it's a mix.
Well, Matt,
It's a
have you
connection between all of them. But also,
you've seen Taxi Driver, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I've seen Taxi Driver.
I was
Is
just
that all?
wondering. Sorry.
I thought you were gonna.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
Yeah, I've seen Taxi Driver. I've seen Goodfellas. I've seen Irishman. Now,
See, I think Casino was in my opinion was the best of those. Casino to me was um, really great, and that goes back to kind of like Ty, how our opinions on certain things just aren't the same. How you like Tarantino movies, and I, in essence, like Tarantino movies. I think there's just too much dialogue, just too much dialogue all around. It's his signature thing, but to me, it just it kills it for me. It's because to me it's try hard, bullshit that I just I don't know. I think he could do it. He does let the suspense, but it's just too much. It's just too much. It's too artsy. It's just too much. And you and I just disagree about that.
I don't think dialogue is artsy. I think dialogue is, dialogue is our life. Dialogue is our communication. It's the way we talk to each other. So
Yeah, but he intentionally makes long, drawn out, suspenseful dialogue moments in every single one of his movies. That's his thing.
But I find more enjoyment out of dialogue and story and themes than I do from action. I don't. For me, a movie could be action filled and if it's action filled and consistent, it could be equivalent to
But you're
something that's
missing
well written.
you're missing the point of what I'm saying. Let's just reference an actual point. So, Inglourious Bastards, when
Right.
when the Nazi guy comes into the theater before they know the theater girl is a Jew, the whole scene where she's sitting down serving him cake and eating cake, I can't remember exactly how it goes.
Right.
A lot of that dialogue, bro, is I get it's suspenseful because it's coming from her point of view, where she doesn't want to get busted as a Jew, and he's like kind of fucking with her, but it's just a bunch of senseless fucking dialogue to
No,
build
it's
to build to
not.
build to build suspense, bro. And I just felt like
But it's not
I just think
artificial,
at
though. It's not.
that point in time, it's not artificial, but it's also not. You could have got your point across much quicker than what it was done.
Well, he's not necessarily trying to make a point. It's the charisma of a scene, right? It's like, do you want to make a point and move on, or do you want to kind of allow people to feel something and sit around and let the idea simmer?
Right,
kind
and
of
I just
play
think
with them, play with the
I
audience.
just think he drags some of the scenes out too much, too much. I just think that
Well,
those scenes sometimes in his movies are dragged out too much. Is all.
well, I think one thing we say on the podcast each week is that movies are subjective. It just depends
Correct.
on how you feel and how you grew up. You grew up in the '80s, right? Like as like a
I
young
was
kid?
83. I mean, it's really
Yeah.
like a 90s baby, but yes, I remember the
So
80s.
you're probably more into those more action type of movies, right? I'd say.
Oh, well, I was as a kid. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What are your top 3 films right now? Would you say?
I mean, I love films to the point where I wouldn't say there's a top 3, because there's just so many films that I love, but they wouldn't be like Casablanca or The Godfather. Those aren't going to
Yeah.
be in my top 100.
Yeah.
So
I think that's just the opposite. Ty would probably have The Godfather up in his top 10, right?
Yeah, it would definitely. The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 would probably be in my top 10. Taxi Driver would be up there. Psycho
see,
might be up there.
mine would be like Avatar, dude. I thought Avatar was mind blowing. Was a brand new experience. It was like a movie outside of a movie, man. It was amazing. Like, it was amazing. The story doesn't get. It's a badass storyline with a lot of nourishment in there for just the world around you. Get immersed in it. Like, that was, to me, that's one of the top 5 would be like Avatar.
Yeah.
Well, I think we
that's
Oh, go ahead.
cool
Go ahead.
thing. That's the cool thing about movies is that we all have differing opinions on them, and that's
Right.
why we share them through the podcast and stuff. So that's one thing we say
Mm.
also when we review it. We say, okay, movies are subjective. Don't take our word for it. Review it yourself. Watch the movie yourself and determine whether you enjoyed it or not, and tell us whether you enjoyed it or not and why. It's just something. Just we're all so different, like, and we think so differently that when we watch a movie, we'll see it through our own eyes. We're not seeing it through other people's eyes. Even when we read a review, we're going to be like, I'll review it for myself usually. Now, if someone takes someone else's review and says, "Oh, this movie's absolutely horrible. I'm never going to watch it," because then they didn't like really watch it and understand why they didn't like it. They just took someone's word for it. So, I think one thing that really is important when watching movies and like, because movies are again an art. They're a form of
Yeah.
art. So, the art doesn't always like. Not
Art,
everyone has the same
art
feeling of
objective.
towards a piece of art.
Right. Art is not objective, and like we
Well,
all
it's like
seek
there's
different
theaters and
things.
there's different genres of theater, right? Because all this is theater, was what it is. It's performance art, and it's like music, man. It's a universal language just spoken from a different angle, from a different perspective.
Yeah,
It
we
it
all
it,
seek
it doesn't
different
vary
things
much.
from
It doesn't
movies.
vary that much from music. It's in its essence, it is music. It's a visual music.
Dance, I guess you could say. It's a, it's a, yeah, they're all performances, and I don't know. I think, like, for me, what I look for in movies is I like subtlety, and I like I do like lots of dialogue. I honestly I prefer it to action because for me, the vicarious experience of watching a movie doesn't come from wanting to watch cool shit, which I do like that sometimes. I'm not saying I dislike it. I'm fine with that. Action movies are great. They're a good thing to watch with people and they're fun. But for me, the reason why I like stuff that's usually more dialogue heavy is because I don't know. I like to have some kind of intrinsic meaning or lesson that I can kind of take and think about and I don't know.
You
And
No, and
also I
and
think
I
that
do too, man. I do too. It just comes from a different perspective, man. Like you guys, I don't mean to bring this up, but you guys are youngsters. You guys don't remember a time before the internet, probably, right? Movies that we're reviewing
uh,
like today is pre-internet, So you got to understand, big blockbuster action movies. That was what you had for entertainment. There weren't so many. There was, 7 TV stations, and movies would come out, and you'd go to the movie theater. So you got to see what that was the thing, was to go out and see, because there wasn't a lot. There wasn't really much on the silver screen. It was very, Magnum PI type shit.
right.
That
It
was like
wasn't
each
until
week.
the late
Each week,
'90s.
it's like each week they're solving a new case, or each week they're doing just something different that they're doing. And in the '80s was pre-internet, so like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Jean-Claude Van Damme, these people had earned their spot in the limelight because of how far their movie reached people pre-internet. Like they reached the masses, where they still have diehard fans to this day. That if those people were around during the internet, they would be nothing. They would be nothing special. They would just be another dude on the internet who can do some awesome shit. You know what I mean? Because
I
as we found with
disagree.
the internet, everyone can have. There's a bunch of people who could do badass martial arts, probably better than the people who do it in the movies. Like
Right.
there's a bunch of that shit on the internet now that there wasn't back in the '80s. So that's why everyone tried to mold Arnold Schwarzenegger to play all these different, tough guy type roles, because he's a big ass dude. And there wasn't a lot of big ass dudes around back then, that was
Mm.
easily accessible, that could act, or they're bringing people from Austria that can't fucking speak English just because of his size, to try to put that up on the big screen for people. Whereas then
Right.
now the shit
Well,
is everywhere. There's there's more actors than there were back then. More big ass dudes that meet all these criteria for today's movies. So there's always going to be that perspective gap, because I didn't grow up with the intranet, which gave you so many more possibilities regarding everything in life.
well, that's the thing though. Is I like a lot of the movies I like are older. I just think for me, time isn't a factor. I think if someone can tell a great story and they have genuinely great ideas, I think that it should be appreciated and preserved and if
I
it
agree
came
with
out
that,
tomorrow, if it
but
came out in 1930.
but you are prejudiced because you were born in the internet era. So you can only
That's
see it from a certain point of view because you can't go backwards in a way of thinking because you never experienced it. So in a way, it's a slight handicap.
Well, I
I
see where you're
disagree
coming
because
from.
if I know what you mean, but I'm saying
I
that.
want to hear Matt's opinion on this.
Okay, yeah, go ahead,
Well,
go ahead.
most of my experiences with these old movies. Now I got to see it through my eyes of my dad. Also, he came out in the '60s, and all you could really see, you couldn't watch reruns on TV at that time, so you had to go to the theater. And if you didn't go to the theater, you're shit out of luck. There's no way you could
Or
see that movie.
VHS.
The VHS didn't come out till like the '80s. So
Well, yeah. I'm not saying in the '60s, but I'm saying like if it, for to relate to Dean.
It was
Yeah.
reel to reel. It was reel to reel in the '60s.
yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of people who had those machines were lucky to have them. Like
They were rich people. They were
yeah,
rich people.
They had a lot of money. Now, my dad was a farmer and stuff, so when he talks about like seeing Star Wars, that's the big one. Is like the first time seeing Star Wars, going to the movie theater and waiting in that line just to see this movie is like I have to try to see it through his eyes. And today we go to the theater and it's easy for us to get a seat to a movie because well we can get online, we can get a ticket like right off the bat. We can pre-order our tickets. We can and most of the time these theaters
not
aren't
just going on about the tickets, about the movie like your dad. It's not just the movie. It's the experience. Seeing this crazy, mind-blowing shit that's never been done on screen, going it for the first time. When we go to the movies, guys, we're not going to the movies nowadays expecting to have the wheel reinvented. Okay, back then,
right.
that shit was the wheel reinvented. It was brand new, right?
That's true.
All I'm trying to say is that from the opinions of you guys to mine is you guys will be just slightly jaded because, and I'm slightly jaded towards the 80s where you guys are slightly like looking at it back from a past point of view because you have access to it due to the intranet, which makes it to where you had easier access to things. You didn't have to live in the moment, rewind the fucking tapes, go through all that. So there is a slight why I have like massive love for Sylvester Stallone because the dude was a part of my childhood. I went to the movies all the time. You know what I mean? It could be the same as like I don't know what you guys are into, but I don't know. I'm gonna probably sound old by saying this, but like your favorite YouTubers or something. It's the equivalent to that. You know what I mean? Like growing up, it was like Sylvester Stallone was like a role model. He was like how to be a man, how to it played a huge influential role on who I am today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could compare it to almost.
I think
go
comparison
ahead.
between YouTubers and movie stars is actually really relevant because you think whenever a YouTuber releases this video and it's one that you really want to watch or you really enjoy watching, you go ahead and like immediately when they upload, you go ahead and watch that video like straight off the bat. It's like when like for him, Sylvester Stallone, when he made a movie and then released it in theaters, it didn't even matter what the story was about. It was more about the movie star himself, right?
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Because he presented this aura of how he was a figure to look forward to, aspire to, because there wasn't like the shit wasn't everywhere. You know what I mean? It was just like playing outside, watching football. It was just very non-digital. It was the pre-digital age. So it was like these people that you go and see them in one movie, two movies, they're great. You're like diehard fans of them. So every movie, you're like, I can't wait to go and see the movie theaters because you didn't have instant access to be able to like, oh, I'm going to review this movie. It was totally different back then.
Well, also another thing about Sylvester Stallone is that he came like off the streets of Philly. The only roles he had before that was like, oh, I'm the big guy, I'm the bad guy, I'm going to fight you and stuff. And that's all he did.
Wasn't he a porn actor?
Scenes. What?
He was a porn actor, I think. Sylvester Stallone was a porn actor. I'm pretty sure.
No, he did like one movie that didn't realize that he didn't realize what it was. But it was a porn, yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It wasn't like he was like some porn star out there. It wasn't like that.
No.
It was a role that I'd read the whole.
He didn't know.
It was like a. Yeah. It was like a role, and then it come to find out when he got there and got the film, and he was an actor, an inspiring actor. So he got tricked into showing up onto a.
So they goofed on him.
Your managers will do that. Managers will do that. They'll
That's so fucked.
kind of trick you and be
remember.
like, okay, here's a role, take it. You get money for it. I get money for it.
Right.
That's all.
right. And back then there was no, okay, let me do my research on this company. Yeah, like, let me see what they've done. Let me get on the internet. Dude, this shit was all like one company owned a bigger corporation, which owned a bigger corporation. There was no way to really, like, if you're a actor sleeping on your buddy's couch and bitching about not paying you rent, or you not paying him rent, and they give you a call, say, hey, we got to roll $200. Back then, $200 was a lot of money. That'd pay your rent in Los Angeles. So
Yeah.
they go do it. Dude shows up. It's a porn thing. So it was like, it was a whole situation. But yes, the difference just is they reached far masses because that was the way that the information traveled back then. It travels differently now. To get people to go to the movies, you got to put $250 million into a blockbuster to get people
Right.
up into those seats.
And blockbuster movies are all, in my opinion, often worse. They're more often bad than they are good, in my opinion, because I don't know. I don't really like to nitpick, so I'm fine with, like, for example, when we watched the Snyder Cut, right? I fully went into that expecting to
I
fucking
think
hate it
that
because
we should hold off on Snyder Cut because I think
Yeah,
that's something that we should actually review, maybe even
yeah.
in like a 2-part series, because
okay,
there's
well,
like shit that I would want to take notes on that motherfucker. You know what I mean? There's
okay,
definitely
well,
some
yeah, I
I'm
just
hoping.
I'd want to take notes because that's a whole that would open up a whole can of worms that would lead into like in-depth discussion. You know?
right. Well, I just wanted to talk mainly not about the movie, but about my experience with it, like my reception of it, right? So if I am predisposed to not like big blockbuster superhero type copy paste movies, which is what I expected it to be. That's what I expected it to be. And I went in and I was like, you know what? This movie's kind of, I mean, it's not like I said, it's not reinventing the wheel, or like you said, sorry, but it is leaning into what it is. You know what I mean? And so that kind of thing, when movies are like that, right, I'm fine with it. Like Godzilla, right? Obviously, it's not the most philosophical, artsy thing, but
Right.
it's fun, and I can fuck with that. But at the same time, there are movies I think that are so awfully poorly written and poorly conceived that kind of try to capitalize off of that action cool factor that they
Well, I
just
think
fucking flop.
yeah, like the Jack Black Godzilla, or was it Godzilla, or
King
was it
Kong.
King
King Kong?
Kong?
The Jack Black King Kong. That movie was terrible. Like that movie, it was at the. I thought that movie was terrible. Jack Black couldn't even turn it around, and he is like one of the. I feel he's so freaking funny, dude. Like he's really good. But like that movie was just a huge flop. Even though they put all that money into it, it just did not communicate well on the big screen, in my opinion.
Right.
Well,
Right.
let's try to bring it back to RoboCop real quick with the
Yeah.
when I experienced the 2014 RoboCop, I watched it in theaters, and that's me experiencing a film with other people in the theater that wanted to watch this film. That's different. I think your first experience for any movie is the one that you're gonna like review. Like, okay,
Right.
this movie was great because I was in theaters watching it. I had my big bucket of popcorn. I was cramming that stuff down and watching this movie along with some of my friends. And I think even I've seen the Emoji Movie. And that movie's absolute garbage. But the experience I had the first time, I went into the theater with a whole row of friends from high school, and we all watched that movie and just made jokes about it the entire time. And that's my experience.
Right, right. Yeah, me too. Me too.
So I think it's your
Right.
first experience
It's
with the
almost
film
like
is kind of what makes the film. So
right,
I would
right, right.
I would
Yeah,
agree
that's
with
true.
that. I would agree with that to a degree. Your first experience, the way that the impression it leaves on you, it does mar you a little bit in the remaining watches and how you walk away and how you speak about the film.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's like like with anything, reading a book or listening to music, right? Like there's music that you can listen to it. Like if your friend says, "Hey, listen to this," and you listen to it, and you're like, "God, this shit sucks. Like it's awful," And then you listen to it some more, and then you're like, "Oh, maybe it's actually kind of good." And keep listening
Right.
to it. It does stops mattering to you because it's the energy, the experience that you go through, listening to it, or you know what I mean. That it can change on you. So it's a little different with music, but like for example with movies, right? We've seen this a lot actually with a lot of the movies we covered. Um, like, I really appreciate movies that you can go back and watch them and see that there are details that make it fresh every time. Like when we watched I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, right? I've seen that movie 14
Yeah.
times. And every time I watch through it, like I said, I cry every time. It's impossible for me not to cry, but I find myself crying at different points in the movie because the way it's foreshadowed, is something that it's so subtle. It's something that you don't see watching through the first time, but watching through the second time, it's just as important. So it feels like the creators put that actual care and love and consistency into the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think one good thing about movies is like rewatchability. Am I able to rewatch this movie? And I can feel that with RoboCop, even the original one, because some of the death scenes are
Mm-hmm.
pretty funny and they're pretty good. I really like the out of nowhere toxic death. Like the truck crashes into a vat of toxic chemicals and
Boiling
he comes
water or
out.
some
Yeah,
shit.
the guy's face is melted. Is
Yeah,
that what we're talking
Yeah,
about? Where it's
yeah.
like drooping down
it's
his face.
so
Yeah, it's like
it's just
out of the blue.
hilarious.
Yeah.
It's so weird, and I think I'd watch this movie not because of the story, but because of the stunts and the action, which is what they were going for back in the '80s, because that's what people were into. Well,
Right.
I'm not going to go back and watch it specifically because of the story, because some points are story wise aren't exactly concrete and very well developed. But I think also if I was born in the '80s and this was like a film I saw in theaters, I probably would have loved it. I feel like I
Yeah.
would have loved this. Uh, Now I don't know how I feel about it right now. Like I like it for some stuff. The story, I'm really story based sometimes, but I'm also like, okay, the effects were really good. The explosions were really good. The car, the RoboCop's look is like nostalgic, and you just know that it's RoboCop when you see it. Like you
Right.
just know that's
It's
RoboCop.
iconic.
Yeah, it's iconic,
Yeah.
and so I know that I didn't experience this movie in the theater. I probably would love it a lot more if I had, but I experienced it watching like from this chair literally last night, watching it on my monitor, and just watching it and trying to enjoy it for what it was. And I think if I had a different experience, okay, we lost him. I think if I had experienced it in the theaters, like in the '80s, you probably did. Did you watch this in the movie theater, or did you watch it?
I watched it in the theaters. It wasn't during the release because back then they would repopulate movies, right? So you could see them. They would go from the normal big movies, and they go to what we now call, I don't know if they're even still around, the dollar movie theaters, right?
Yeah,
So where you could go and
Mm.
be there for 4 or 5, 6 months on a Saturday, very specific days of the week, because they didn't always just play blockbusters continuously back to back every day. That's not how movies used to be, right? It was staggered, so you had to go make sure to go catch the 9:30 RoboCop, because if you missed that, it would play again for another 10 days until you get to see it again. So it was very different back then. So I did see it in theaters, but it wasn't during the initial, because again, I was only like 6. No, I was 4 when it first came out. So I would have watched it around like 91. Would have been the first time I went and saw it in movie theaters with my old man. Would have been like around 91 at the bargain movie theater, because we grew up in Anderson pretty poor, so we couldn't really afford the normal movies at the time. It was always, we had to wait till they hit the dollar movie store.
yeah.
Mm.
So I think yeah, a big part of your experience with a movie is where you saw it first and who you were with and all that. But also, you got to still remember what type of movie it was, whether it was good or bad. Because you said also that you hadn't watched this for 15 years, and you said
Yep,
back then you had loved it and like it was the greatest movie of all time, and
it
then you
was.
watched it
It
now,
was
and then you were just like, is this as good as it
goofy.
was?
It's goofy. Yeah, it's just that it's goofy, because you I had said, you go and you see it when you're young, so you're still impressionable, and you see it as your young mind, as a 14-year-old or as an 11-year-old, and you think at the time, this is awesome. So you build it up in your head to be awesome, and you'll keep it in your memory as that movie was awesome. Anything RoboCop you're going to love. Get a wallet that says RoboCop on it, whatever, because I'm going to associate myself with RoboCop because it was a part of who I was. But going back, watching it from, after having 3 kids, 2 of them raised out, beyond 18, looking at it now, you can tell what it was. It was, even if it wasn't broadcasted strictly for children, it was very diluted for children,
Yeah,
right? It
very
was
child
very
oriented.
you didn't have to explain a bunch of complex things there, anything. I did like how they went into detail regarding his calibrations, right, during RoboCop. How I liked that, even in the 80s back then, they didn't really spend time on Murphy. They didn't spend time on any character development, but they did on RoboCop's like calibration, like through his eyes, all the times he'd been worked on. Time was passing. The new year happened. People were blowing stuff in his face, being like, "Oh, Happy New Year," blah blah, as he's just sitting there recording information. Right.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I did like regarding the film on the 10. I'm a detail oriented guy when it comes. I love the detail, and that was one of the finer details in the movie was the calibration scenes.
Yeah. One thing I was really surprised with was, even though it looked a little bit goofy now, is when that robot, the one that's not RoboCop, the one that's the big robot with
Yeah,
the machine guns mounted on the side,
yeah.
walks into the office the first time, and it's just like, I know this was like life changing back then, like back when it came out, like it walking into the office, but now it kind of just looks a little goofy because it's stop motion
Yeah.
animation, and it's just this giant robot that's supposed to walk into the thing and then shoot this guy, and it looks a bit goofy now, but I can see back then it would have been amazing.
Right, but it almost, going back now, it almost looks like it was they had built a small model, right, and they had filmed this whole thing on like the size of your kitchen table, this guy with the conference room, and like the robot walking, taking a step, like a little molded figure, as you could tell what it is. But at the time, you got to think that was like, it wasn't groundbreaking, but it was cutting edge for 1987.
Well, honestly, I kind of disagree a little bit because, I've always talking about practical effects versus CGI, right? And it's like practical effects are as a base, practical effects are always better. Like if you can modify, like nowadays, if you can modify practical effects with CGI, that's usually the best route. You know what I mean? But so the stop motion animation itself of that robot is good, but it just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. And like if you watch like The Thing, right, which came out before this movie, the practical effects of all the body horror in that movie, it's the same type of stuff. Yeah, it's amazing. It's beautiful. You know what I mean? It cannot be topped by CGI.
The level of detail that was put in to that, the Swamp Thing outfit was amazing. Like
no, I mean The Thing. The movie
Thing.
The Thing.
Oh, The Thing. See, I can't even comment on that because I don't do horror.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, basically,
there's no comment.
I can't explain it to you, but I mean, there's lots of body horror. It's about. It's like a game of Mafia.
It's like Alien. Have you played Among Us?
No.
No. Well, it's a game of Mafia. Yeah.
It's like yes, Mafia. It's like if someone's the person, right?
Who's the bad?
Or they can. Who's the bad one, and then they can make other people the bad one, but you can't tell. Basically, is the thing.
So from what I've heard, because two of my boys play it. From what I heard, it's kind of like a not a knockoff, but a reinvented Clue, the board game.
Oh, I was talking about The Thing, but if we're talking about Among Us,
my bad.
He's trying to understand the movie, what the premise is. Yeah, it's basically like Clue. One of them's a murderer, or in this case, it's an alien inside the person that can kill and eat people. So they got to figure out which one's that. Which one's the bad guy? Which one's going to kill them?
And Among Us or The Thing? The Thing I thought was about like okay. So that's an alien?
Yeah.
It's like an alien monster. Parasite. Yeah. And it completely remakes their body.
It's a good movie.
It's a really good movie.
I mean,
we should.
Amazing.
Yeah, we could do an episode. Yeah, we could do an episode on that
like
because
probably maybe a minute left in my AirPods before they die. Okay. Sorry about
Let's
that.
get your review first. We review each movie out of 1 to 10, just on a scale of 1 to 10. What's your reasoning for it?
Okay, I'm gonna give a 2-part answer. Here's my as a child it was an 8. As a kid, 4. I mean, as a child 8. As an adult 4. I'd give it a 4 out of 10 because the storyline was lacking significantly. No backstories, no real emotion into the characters. It was kind of just following the motions of trying to be a blockbuster movie to make another icon. Looking back as an adult, obviously, as a kid, I loved it for everything that we just discussed. But at looking
Okay.
back as an adult, it's lacking a lot of what I would have expected. I guess with going back and seeing it,
Yeah, yeah.
it was lacking thereof. I found myself like Tyus knows, I was picking it apart at every single instance I
Yeah,
could.
yeah.
A lot of the times I even kept it to myself because I was like, all right, Tyus is going to get tired of me picking this fucking movie apart because I just, I pick it apart. So I would go with a 4.
Okay.
That's me.
That
Yeah.
was also your rating for Akira too. When we watched Akira, that was your rating for it.
That is correct.
But
That is correct. And I didn't see that as a kid. I seen that as an adult.
right.
So,
Um,
I didn't like the blobby stuff in Akira. I thought that was all, if it was cut from a graphic novel, they could have cut better scenes and not waste so much time on the blobby looking character. But yeah, that's just a different
yeah,
conversation.
that's a
But yeah,
different thing.
yeah.
But
Okay.
So I would say mine's a 4, and I appreciate you guys having me on and listening to my opinion. It was great talking with you guys. I felt like it was good. So just thanks all. Really, I appreciate you.
Hopefully we'll have you
yep.
back. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back on.
All right,
Hopefully, we
guys.
can get you to watch some anime with me and Matt, and
Hey,
maybe turn you to the
can
dark
I
side.
suggest a movie?
yeah, we do
Yeah, you can suggest
recommendations
one.
also.
Can I do a recommendation?
Yeah.
Lionheart. If we're staying on the
Lionheart.
theme of 80 movies.
Well, I'm next week. But
Well,
you can
I'm-
recommend it.
I'm just saying Lionheart. I would love to review I would like to get your guys' input on Lionheart.
Okay.
Okay.
It's the John Claude Van Damme movie, Lionheart.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll talk. We'll set up a time. I'll set up a time and place. Okay.
All right. It was great talking with you guys. I
Nice
appreciate
talking with you too.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
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 Okay. So, do you want to go ahead and review it next, or
Yeah. I'm gonna say so for this one. I really enjoyed it for. It's goofy. It has lots of problems, but I think the goofy '80s clichéness of it is part of what made me like it. So, you know what I mean? Like the over the top acting. Like normally I would see that as a flaw. I would usually see that as a glaring flaw. To some extent it is, but I think the fact that it leans into it so much makes it genuinely good in an uncanny way. So
I
I'm
feel
gonna
the
go
same.
ahead and give it.
So I feel similar.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 7 out of 10. That's my score.
Okay.
7 out of 10.
I am not gonna review it that high. I'm gonna give it a 5.56, somewhere in between there, because I really like the effects. I just don't like how much of it they have. So
Yeah.
so like whenever someone dies, there's just too much blood. It's just too much. But
Yeah.
then I like Robocop's look. Robocop looks amazing until he takes off the helmet, and then it looks a little weird. But I really like the effects. I wish they could have done something with the car, actually. I think having a cooler car would have been a little more interesting. So mine's
It's just more toys.
yeah, more toys.
More toys to make. Yeah.
Honestly, that would have been a great idea. So, but I like parts. I like the story of the main character, the Murphy.
Yeah.
I really like Murphy's character. I just wish they had built him up a little more. The 2014 version does that a lot better and builds more of his backstory instead of just having his wife and kids show up at random times, like in flashbacks.
Right.
But overall, I think it's more nostalgia based. Like, people enjoy this movie because it's nostalgic. You know Robocop even if you haven't seen Robocop. You kind of just know what he is. So, I think overall it's a really good movie. And of course, we get back into our whole argument. Movies are subjective. Go watch the movie for yourself and determine whether you like it or not. And then if you like it, tell us why. And if you don't like it, tell us why. Just drop it in the comments down below, and tell us why you don't like it or why you do like it, because we like to know how people think about these movies, because that's what this whole podcast is about, to get our takes on how we feel about films and whatever, and then also recommendations down below also. And you want to go into the recommendations?
Yeah. Well, for our next week we'll be doing the episode on Wednesday? Is that, or do you want me to?
What we'll do this week is we're gonna do Perfect Blue, which is my recommendation
Okay.
because I've heard Ty talk about it, and then we're gonna push back Grave of the Fireflies because
Yeah.
we want to try to get Austin in on that one because we feel like he'll enjoy that one, and also I've heard a
Hmm.
lot of good things about it from Ty, and I feel like it'd be better if we all three were here for that episode. But the
Yeah.
reason we're doing Perfect Blue this week, and it'll be on YouTube only. It won't be on Twitch because I will be out of town. Um, so we're gonna be doing Perfect Blue this upcoming week, and then we'll do after that week. So next week, right? It's Sunday, so the
Yeah.
next week after that, we'll be doing Grave of the Fireflies. Do you understand?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That works.
yeah.
Because
So
there's consequently, or I guess not. I mean, sorry. Coincidentally, those are both movies that I love. Like with all of my heart, I love both of those movies. So I'm kind of actually interested to see what Dean's opinion is on it. But you know,
yeah.
but I don't know. Maybe well, I feel like he'll rip it apart. So we might have to watch it. Me and him might have to watch it separately because he's not very big on the anime train like I am. But you
Hey.
know,
So yeah, that's how we're gonna be doing it. My recommendation is, of course, Perfect Blue. Watch that before we make a podcast and upload it. So
hmm
your recommendation for this week?
well, my recommendation, if we're talking about general recommendation, um, the terrible Doom movie on Netflix. If anyone hasn't seen
The
it,
one with the Dwayne the Rock Johnson?
yeah, the one with the Rock.
I've seen it.
I'm a huge Doom fan. And the movie is fucking terrible, which makes it all the better because it's laughably bad. So that is a good, like, so bad it's good movie. Yeah,
It's one that's good because you can tear it apart and make fun of it.
yeah,
It's one
yeah.
of those movies.
Even me and my uncle agree on that one. So
Yeah,
it's
I agree
it's
with that too.
universally terrible.
I agree with it
Yeah,
too. I've seen it multiple times, and it's every time I think it gets worse, but it's like a
yeah,
disease. It just starts growing on you, gets
yeah. It
bigger.
does. It grows on you.
That's not a disease. That's okay.
I mean, it could a parasite.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah.
Let's go ahead and we're gonna end this episode by saying bye, Ty.
Bye.
Okay.
See ya.
Bye.
See ya. Bye. Goodbye.